What if I told you there was an economic forecast written way back in the 1930s that points to a major economic peak in the year 2026? I know, it sounds like something out of a movie, but it's a real theory that was pretty much lost to time, until now. So, let's dig into this forgotten prediction and see what it might mean for all of us.
You know, this whole thing really boils down to one pretty wild question. Could the cycles of the planets and the moon, this predictable cosmic dance, actually map out the booms and busts of our economy right here on Earth?
It's a huge claim, I get it, but this theory, nearly 100 years old, says yep, absolutely. And its internal clock is pointing to something really big happening in the first half of 2026. This is the story of that exact prediction.
To really get what this prediction is all about, we have to meet the person who came up with it. And honestly, she's as mysterious as the theory itself.
Her name was Louise McWhirter. Now, what's fascinating is that, according to researchers, nobody knows a ton about her. In fact, some people think Louise McWhirter was actually a fake name, a pseudonym for someone who wanted to get these radical ideas out there without revealing who they were. But whether she was real or not, she left behind this incredible economic blueprint.
So what makes this blueprint tick? Well, McWhirter believed our economy moves to the rhythm of a cosmic clock, one that has a super precise 18.6 years cycle. And the whole thing is driven by this one invisible point in the moon's orbit.
The main gear in this cosmic clock is something called the lunar north node. Now here's the tricky part. It's not a planet or a star. You can't point a telescope at it and see it. It's a purely mathematical point in space, an invisible intersection that, according to this theory, holds a ton of importance. Okay, let's break it down. Picture the Earth's path around the sun as a perfectly flat disk, kind of like a vinyl record. That's called the ecliptic plane. Now imagine the moon's orbit around the Earth, but it's tilted just a little bit, by about 5 degrees. The north node is simply one of the two spots where the moon's tilted path crosses over that flat disk. It's just an intersection point up in the sky. Now, here's what's so cool about this point. It moves backward through all 12 signs of the zodiac, and it takes exactly 18.6 years to make one full trip. For McWhirter, this 18.6-year rhythm was the master beat for the entire American economy. So the big question is, how did she turn this celestial cycle into an actual practical business forecast? This is where her work gets really, really specific. And this right here is her master diagram. She went through tons of historical data from the Cleveland Trust Company and found what she believed was an amazing correlation. The position of the north node in the zodiac seemed to line up perfectly with different phases of the business cycle. So she mapped the whole thing out, assigning booms, busts, and recoveries to different astrological signs.
And her rules were anything but vague. She claimed that when the node is in signs like Scorpio and Libra, the economy is humming along, doing better than normal. Then, as it enters Leo, bam, that's the absolute peak. The party starts to wind down as it goes through Cancer and Gemini. It slows down even more in Taurus, and then it bottoms out completely in Aquarius. It's a whole economic wave, mapped right onto the zodiac.
Okay, so that's all fascinating history, but here's the crucial part. What does this 90-year-old map say about right now? Let's take those rules and apply them directly to the year 2026.
Modern astronomical data, what we call an ephemerist, confirms it. For the whole first half of 2026, from January all the way through June, the North Node will be moving through the sign of Leo. And if you were paying attention to her rules, you know exactly what that's supposed to mean.
This is the absolute core of her prediction. McWhirter's #1 rule is that Leo is the sign of maximum business volume. It is the peak, the very top, of the entire 18.6-year cycle. So, according to her theory, the first half of 2026 should be the theoretical high point for the economy. But wait, the story doesn't stop there. McWhirter's system was more complex than that. She also pointed out other factors that could shake things up. And in 2026, a really big one comes into play, and it creates this really tense dynamic.
This timeline just lays it all out perfectly. You've got the peak signal, the North Node in Leo, running for the first 6 months. But look, right in the middle of that, in April, something else happens. The planet Uranus moves into Gemini. Then in July, the node shifts into Cancer, which is the signal for the cool down to begin. So what's the big deal with Uranus entering Gemini? Well, in her research, McWhirter flagged this specific event as a major red flag. She literally called it a secondary bad factor. She said that historically, it lined up with periods of crisis, either huge economic downturns or even war. It's the wild card in the 2026 forecast.
And this brings us to the central problem for 2026, doesn't it? On one hand, you have the main indicator, the North Node in Leo, screaming massive boom. But on the other hand, you have this secondary indicator, Uranus in Gemini, flashing a major warning sign for trouble. It makes you wonder, could the peak itself somehow trigger the crisis that comes after?
You know, this quote really gets to the core of what McWhirter believed. She didn't see things like supply and demand as the cause of anything. She saw them as the effect of a much bigger, predictable cosmic law. A law that, if you could just understand it, could help you see what's coming next.
So what are we supposed to make of all this? We've got this forgotten theory from the 1930s giving us a super detailed, if, unconventional roadmap for 2026. Is it a real cosmic blueprint that reveals some kind of hidden order to the world? Or is it all just one big, fascinating cosmic coincidence? I guess as 2026 unfolds, we're all going to find out.